Reddit, what is the creepiest true story someone has ever told you? I had nightmares or woke up scared at something almost every night when I was like 5 or 6. Then it suddenly stopped. I was talking to my mom years later and she tells me that she sprayed holy water around my room and then they stopped. She was dead serious. It still freaks me out. Edit. I seriously don't want to edit this because I love everyone's stories about holy water in a Windex bottle, and oddly how most of this became a discussion of Half-Life 3, but no, there wasn't a Windex bottle, she just tossed some holy water around. Would have updated earlier, before it took off, but I was on vacation. A friend of mine told me, when she was 13, she and her friend were at the mall and an older guy, 40 plus, started chatting them up and offered to buy them clothes. The girls went along and he bought them each about $100 worth of stuff. Then he wanted them to go back to his place to show him the clothes and the girls ditched him. Hate to think what his plans were to recoup his investment. When I was about 11, some friends and I were having a slumber party and we all snuck out of the house in the middle of the night and went to a park about half a block away. We had been there at least an hour or so when I thought I saw a large shadowy figure about 100 feet away, lurking in the shadows under some trees. We all turned to look and stared in the shadow's direction for about 5 minutes trying to make it out. Right about when we had decided we were seeing things, the figure started running at us at top speed. We jumped up and ran back to the house as fast as we could go and locked the door. We could hear someone moving around the outside of the house and then it began tapping on the windows. We couldn't wake anyone up since we would have had to admit we had snuck out. We spent the night huddled together in the middle of the living room, waiting to be murdered. Luckily we weren't. Whenever I read creepy stories, I always feel a certain wrongness in the room. One of my friends had a job in the hospital looking after patients, making beds etc. I heard he randomly quit his job, wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I bring some beers over to his house and try to see if I can get him talking. He's a total emotional wreck. Finally get him to talk and he says that he was working one night in the hospital when he heard a nurse shouting for help because someone was going into cardiac arrest. So he runs down a hallway and some man runs towards him. They almost bump into each other and the man shouts, "Where's the exit?" My friend points to the exit, then runs into the room with the man going into cardiac arrest, only to see it's the exact same person who ran past him in the hallway. He died in front of his eyes. My friend always said that weird things happened at her house, like hearing footsteps on the steps and no one being there, or hearing the sound of music coming from the attic, but I always thought she was just trying to freak me out. Then one night I'm staying the night at her house, and it is pretty late, so we close her bedroom door and turn on a small lamp she had that was next to the door. We are both just chilling on her bed talking when the door to her room flies open and knocks the lamp off the table. We could see into the hall and there was no one there and no footsteps of someone running away, but I bolt out the door because I'm convinced it is her brother, but he was in his room asleep with the door closed. We never heard anyone moving. We didn't sleep that night. My mom, grandparents, aunt, and uncles and several of their neighbors all swear they saw a UFO hover over my grandparents' house in the late 1960s. They said it just hung over the backyard, silently spinning, expect for a faint whizzing sound for a minute or two with all sorts of colors and a ring. My mom and grandma said they remember the television and radio in the living room turning on full blast, getting transmissions and broadcasts from other countries in other languages, and appliances in the kitchen were rattling. My uncle said it was hanging right outside his bedroom window on the top floor, and that he was too scared to move, just stood by his window, staring. Another time I'm pretty sure I saw a UFO with my mom behind our house about 10 years ago. Our backyard is basically a mile of farmland, and there was a bright, white light bouncing in the middle of the field, and then it just shot up and was gone. Asterisk asterisk TL. Dr. Aliens are probably stalking my mom. I don't know if this is what you mean, but the creepiest true story I have ever heard was the Penpal series by 1000 Vultures. The first one is right here. http://www.reddit.com/r/nolep/comments/k8ktr/footsteps/. My friend's dad was checking up on his daughter late at night, seeing if she was asleep. When he poked his head through her door, he saw that she was standing at the window looking out at the view. He said, "Honey, are you okay? Why don't you go to bed?" And he hears a reply from under the bed sheets saying, "Dad, I'm already in bed." He looks over at the bed, and there's his daughter. Looks back over at the window, and no one's there. It's okay. I didn't want to sleep tonight anyway. This isn't a story someone told me, but it was a creepy experience nonetheless. Back in junior high, a girl brought a Ouija board to school. Look up how it works first, if you've never heard of it before. Naturally, almost all of us thought it was complete BS, but a group of girls became obsessed with the thing throughout the day. Finally, I got tired of it and wanted to prove that it was nonsense, so I told them to guess my grandfather's first name, something I knew none of them would know because they weren't close friends and my grandfather lived hundreds of miles away. They guessed correctly on the first try. It was a little unnerving. One day I was searching through my drawers in my room, and I found a cassette tape of Baba the Elephant. I totally forgot I used to watch that program and listen to the tape. I opened it up and there was a different tape in it titled New Year. I searched my drawers for a tape player and found one, played the tape, and heard my grandpa singing songs at New Year on it, saying that this song was for his beautiful daughters. I take the tape through to my mum, telling her I randomly found it in my drawer. My mum listens to it and starts crying and says that my grandpa died on this very day. Makes me feel like he's looking out for us. Why did I open this before bed? Thank God I discovered this thread in the morning. Let me lighten this thread up for those who can't sleep. This is an absolute true story in the sense that it happened. Not that it isn't a coincidence. My mom believes that whenever she dreams of poop, she will come into a small fortune that day after. I thought she was kidding. One time she told me she dreamt of poop and she won $20 from the lotto after getting 3 numbers or something like that. Another time she received an unexpected bonus from her work as a nurse. TL, doctor, I never dream of poop, open bracket. An acquaintance used to tell me about this man in his house. He would get up at night to get some water and there would be this 1890s looking man with a beard playing the piano, and then he would get up and walk around doing normal 1890s man stuff, all in complete silence. Only the floor was originally dirt and was later made into a wood floor about 12 to 18 inches higher. So the man was walking around on the original floor and the new floor cut him off at the knee. He said it was super creepy seeing him walk around cut off by the floor, but it was worse when he was playing the piano cause he would stare at him the whole time. So do you want true stories or true stories? It's not especially scary, but once, when I was younger, 7 or 8, I woke up in the night to piano music downstairs. We had an old piano and I went to bed much earlier than my family, so I just presumed it was my dad playing the music. However, when I asked about it the next day, nobody admitted to playing, so I presumed I had dreamt it. A few years later, we decided to clear out our attic, which was still littered with stuff from the previous owners. We found some dusty old sheet music in a corner and asked my dad to play it. I instantly recognized it as the music from that night and subsequently didn't sleep for a week. I always eat these creepy threads up, and I always regret it as soon as I turn my computer off. My dad told me this story once of how my grandpa knew a guy, I'll call him Bob, that used to work at Area 51. He never said anything about it though, because it was against regulation. Anyway, one night Bob and my grandpa are at a bar getting wasted, and Bob starts talking about Area 51, which was a first. He goes on about the creatures and aliens and UFOs in there, about the experiments and such. My grandpa didn't really pay much attention to it. At the end of their drinking and confession session they part their ways, planning on meeting up at the bar later that week again. This is the weird part. My grandpa is waiting for his bud at the bar later that week, and he doesn't show. He tries calling and getting a hold of him later, but nothing. He never hears from him again. No one had after that night he went off about Area 51. My great-grandparents had a crapload of kids. One of them was premature and apparently only had one eye. My great-grandpa did the delivery and refused to let anyone see it. Everyone in the house heard it crying when he went to the backyard to bury it alive. Now, at the same house you could hear a baby crying at night. My mother alleges she has heard the cries before. I never spent the night there. My grandma told me that back in the 1970s she was looking to buy this old Victorian house in Liverpool, England, and on their way up to the second floor, when she stood on this one certain step on the staircase she would feel completely overcome with emotions. She said that, when she stepped on it she felt nauseated, but peaceful and a sad kind of happiness. This happened every time that she went up that staircase on that exact step. Later on, when the realtor was telling her some of the history of the house, she told her that a nun died on the staircase. Her body was found lying on that specific step. I knew a girl who said that, while home alone, she heard a tapping sound on the floor of her kitchen, coming from the basement. She's worried it might be a pipe leaking, so she uses her house phone to call her dad, and he tells her not to worry about it. After hanging up the house phone, her cell phone immediately rings. It's her dad, telling her to call the cops and GTFO, because he heard someone breathing on the other end of the line. She gets out of the house and calls the cops. The cops show up, search the house, and find some psycho in the basement with a machete. Apparently, he had been tapping it against the basement ceiling in an attempt to lure her downstairs. If she'd gone down into that basement, she probably would never have come back up. When my grandfather was a teenager, he dated a girl whose father had disappeared when she was a child. Her father was a drunk who abused her mother, so most just assumed he had left town for greener pastures. Fast forward 40 years to when the girl's mother died. She went to the police, as was her mother's dying wish, and confessed that her mother had killed her father. Not only that, but she had chopped him up in the kitchen, and made the girl and her siblings throw his body parts into the outhouse. They continued to use the outhouse all throughout her childhood. My mom told me a story about her cousin Bobby. Bobby and his girlfriend got in a severe car accident, and his girlfriend died while he lived. After the accident he had a recurring dream that he and his girlfriend were on opposite sides of a river. She would always scream and try to get him to swim across the river to her, but he refused. One night, he woke up and said goodbye to everyone in his family and that he'd never see them again. Everyone was very confused, and he explained that he had dreamed that he had crossed the river. He died the next day in a car crash. And no, the car crash was not his fault.